goalkeeper is one of the most important positions of a team of soccer. The main aim of the goalkeeper is to prevent the ball from going over the line to prevent an opposition score. This can be done in a variety of ways. Dive, parries, catches are all ways that you can use. Distribution is also a part of the goalkeeper's job. However, in this video we will just be looking specifically at the diving skills. In the one-dimensional skill classification, the soccer save can be considered a gross motor skill as it involves the use of large muscle groups. A continuous skill as there is no distinct start or endpoint, and an open motor skill as it is completely reactionary as to what the opposition player is doing. According to the Gentile taxonomy, the goalkeeping save can be considered a four-dimensional skill, which makes it one of the hardest motor skills to perform. This is due to the in-motion regulatory conditions, the intertribal variability, and object manipulation with the ball, and the need to transport your body in a multiple of ways.
There are several key aspects that relate to a successful goalkeeper dive. The first of these is the set position. A keeper must always remain front on to the ball wherever it goes during play. They must remain on the balls of their feet with their knees bent to be ready to make sudden movements in any direction and to be springy to make a dive. They must keep their hands to the side of their body and to the front so that they are ready to attack the ball with their hands. They must also keep their weight forward to cut off the angle and to be ready to attack the ball. And again, they must be ready to spring into action quickly in any direction. A goalkeeper also needs great footwork. They must always remain, again, facing the ball at all times. They must remain on their toes with their weight forward, so they're always ready to make changes in direction. And they must always move laterally, never crossing their feet over, in order to always face the ball and be ready to spring into action. Catching is an essential part to making a goalkeeper save. The goalkeeper must always get their hands to the ball first and ensure that their hands and arms are soft and cushiony, bending at the elbows to lessen the impact of the force. Their hands must also be in the W grip, which is having the thumbs together, getting behind the ball. And again, they must always ensure that their weight is forward, along with their hands and their arms. The low save is used when the ball is shot at the keeper along the ground or just off the ground. The keeper must again ensure that their hands are soft and cushioning to lessen the impact of the shot. They must ensure that their hands are always first to the ball and that they dive forward so as to attack the ball and to cut off the angle to cover as much goal as possible. It's also important that they have an explosive power as they attack through the ball so as to make sure that they don't make any sloppy saves, and if they don't catch it, that it goes far away from the goal. When the ball goes along the ground, it's important to use the three-handed save technique, which involves 3 points of contact, the ball being on the ground, the bottom hand being behind the ball, and the top hand being over the top of the ball. And it's also important that the goalkeeper dives on their side and does not land on their stomach or on their back. The final aspect of a goalkeeper save is the high save, which is used for shots that are at the goal at a high trajectory. The keeper must keep their hands soft and cushioning again to lessen the impact of the shot. They must also take a step forward towards the flight of the ball to make sure that their dive is forward and attacking the ball. They should always get their hands first to the ball to make sure that they make the save in the first place, and they must ensure that they have an explosive power attacking through the ball to ensure that any shots that are too powerful are parried away successfully from the goal. They can also use their non-takeoff leg to drive into the dive and increase momentum. They must use the W grip technique when catching the ball again, keeping their thumbs behind the ball. And it's important that the keeper cushions their landing with the ball so as to lessen the impact of the dive and to make sure that the ball is in their hands when the save is made.
Fit stages of learning splits the learning into 3 separate stages. The first stage is cognitive. The learner begins in cognitive state. In this stage, the learner attempts to understand how skills perform. Numerous errors will be made. After about 4 weeks, it is expected that the learner will progress to an associative stage. In this stage, the learner will begin to understand how various skills are interrelated and will begin to adapt to the environmental demands. The last stage of learning is the autonomous stage. Once reaching this stage, the movement is now automatic to the learner. Less errors will be made during performance and learning will become very slow. When performing the key aspects, all will be done to the appropriate standard. When prescribing an exercise program, it is important to keep in mind the two concepts of practice distribution and practice variability. With practice variability, as this is an open skill, it is important to include as much variety as possible. The benefits of this is it produces more errors than initial learning when it is easy to train, more accurate and undertaking a transfer task, and it increases the capacity to perform a skill in future situations. The use of random practice is shown to not teach as much as the block practice in the short term, but when it comes to retaining information, random practice has been proven to reach higher levels than block. Lastly, it has been proven that mental practice is an effective aid in learning motor skills. The use of mental practice as well as physical practice has had a positive correlation on learning. With practice distribution, distributed practice sessions were used for our program. Sessions were shorter and more frequent, and the trial rest intervals were longer than mass practice. Dale and Christina show that better learning results when people practice skills in more frequent and shorter practice sessions. These were shown to be backed up with 3 hypotheses: the fatigue hypothesis, the cognitive effort hypothesis, and the memory consolidation hypothesis. Lastly, it is important that the learner does not overlearn. This will increase the amount of fatigue and the motivation that the learner has towards the task.
In order to assess learning, 2 tests will be undertaken: the quantitative test and the qualitative test. The quantitative test consists of 20 shots taken at the goalkeeper in goal, with the amount of saves recorded and the amount of shots let in recorded. The qualitative assessment will assess the quality of the saves, so any shots outside the 18-yard box or court or behind the baseline are given 3 points. Any shots that are parried within the 18-yard box are given 2 points, and any shots that fall within the red zone around the 6-yard box are given 1 point. Any shot that is not stopped and goes in the goal is given 0 points, for a maximum score of 60.
A pre-test will be administered before training has started, and a post-test will be administered after training has started. These tests will be the same as the one outlined in the assess and learning part of this presentation. After a week of completion of the program, the learner will be required to come back and undergo a retention test. The main aim of a retention test is to see how much of the information the learner has actually retained. This test will again be the same as the ones listed in the slide before. Once the learner has showed adequate retention, he or she will be administered a transfer test. This can be done in football by either having a 2-on-1 attack or by the use of having a defender and a goalkeeper as shown next.
Feedback is an essential part of motor development and learning. During the cognitive stage, an athlete has very little idea of the action that they are supposed to be completing. Therefore, it's very important that they undergo observation of a more skilled athlete complete the action, that they receive verbal feedback from a coach who will correct mistakes and errors in form, and that they pay attention to their own sensory feedback, which is the way in which they perform the action themselves. When coaching beginners, it's very important that you catch their attention, make sure there's no distractions, and keep the athlete motivated. In order to do this, it's better to start with less words and more demonstration. This can be done through the use of good verbal cues, and you have to make sure that the demonstration precedes the practice so the athlete has an idea of what they're supposed to be doing and can use that as a goal during their session. During the earlier stages, when the athlete is still learning the movement, a lot more concurrent feedback will be used. However, once the movement has been demonstrated at a proficient level, more terminal feedback will be used in order to increase the proficiency. Lastly, as it is unlikely that the athlete will master the techniques over the 5 weeks, it's important to focus on the knowledge of performance rather than knowledge of results.